They were attacking a book they had barely even read. Its pages were still being printed in a small New York town when excerpts began appearing in newspapers. Critics mocked it. Some locals vowed never to buy it. But the strange part? The controversy was spreading faster than the book itself. So how did a disputed text become thousands of copies and travel far beyond Palmyra? In 1830, the Book of Mormon entered American history as a nearly 600-page book backed by an enormous financial gamble. But before the public could even buy it, newspapers were already mocking and circulating pieces of it. Now, for the first time, the controversial text was no longer just a claim. It was a physical book anyone could read, challenge, accept, or reject. And the gamble was only beginning. Chapter 1. The book becomes a physical object. The problem was simple. A book this large had to be printed, and printing it would cost money. In the summer of 1829, Joseph Smith and Martin Harris approached printers in western New York. The region had a growing print culture, with local presses producing newspapers, pamphlets, notices, and books for communities scattered across the countryside. But this project demanded something different. It required thousands of copies of a book approaching 600 pages. That meant months of work, large quantities of paper, hundreds of pages of hand-set type, and a printer willing to take on a project whose success could not be guaranteed. One printer turned them down. Eventually, they returned to Egbert B. Grandin, a young printer in Palmyra. Grandin's press was already part of the town's everyday life. It produced printed material for a community where information could move quickly from the press room into shops, homes, churches, and conversations. Now that press was being asked to produce a controversial religious book on an unusually large scale, Grandin agreed to produce something enormous for a local printing business. 5,000 copies. The price was $3,000. The commitment was substantial. Thousands of copies would have to be produced before the public had even seen a complete edition. And once the money was spent, there would be no easy way to reverse the decision. For the project to move forward, someone had to guarantee the payment. That responsibility fell heavily on Martin Harris. On August 25, 1829, Harris mortgaged 151 acres of his farm to secure the printing cost. The decision put real property behind the publication. This was not simply money changing hands at a printing counter. A piece of Harris's livelihood was now tied to whether those books could be produced and paid for. If the project failed financially, the consequences could reach beyond the people who believed in the book. They could reach the land itself. The risk was now attached to real property. And Grandin was not simply printing a few pamphlets. The job required thousands of copies of a book approaching 600 pages. The manuscript had to be transformed into something entirely different. Individual pieces of type had to be arranged into lines and pages. Those pages had to be checked, corrected, printed, folded, gathered, and eventually bound into finished volumes. Typesetting began in 1829. John H. Gilbert, one of the compositors, worked on setting the text into type. The manuscript did not simply pass through the press unchanged. As part of the typesetting process, punctuation and other features of the printed presentation had to be supplied or adjusted. Every page demanded physical labor. Every sheet had to pass through the machinery. And every completed copy brought the project closer to a moment when the public could finally judge the finished book. Page after page had to be assembled by hand, then printed, then folded, then gathered, then bound. The work continued for months. Inside the printing operation, the project was becoming something tangible. Outside it, however, the controversy was beginning to take shape. The scale was enormous for the operation. Nearly 3 million printed pages would eventually be produced. That number reveals what the gamble actually required. Before thousands of people could read the book, thousands of physical objects had to exist. Paper had to become pages. Pages had to become volumes. And volumes had to become something that could leave Palmyra. But while the printers were building the book, another problem was emerging outside the press room. People were already talking about it, and some were already trying to stop it. Chapter 2. The 5,000 copy gamble. 5,000 copies meant something important. The Book of Mormon was not being produced as a tiny private experiment. It was being prepared for a public market. But that market had no guarantee of success. There was no established audience waiting to purchase thousands of copies. There was no certainty that the public would accept the book. and there was no way to know whether the controversy surrounding it would help sales or destroy them. The financial obligation remained. The printing continued, and then the project collided with something the printers could not control: public opposition. In Palmyra, skepticism toward the book was becoming increasingly visible. The controversy existed in a community small enough for religious disagreements to become intensely personal and intensely local. Rumors could spread quickly. Newspaper pages could turn private disputes into public ones. And the unfinished book was beginning to acquire a reputation before most people could examine the complete volume. The controversy was no longer confined to private conversations. It was entering the newspaper, and that changed everything. Abner Cole, who published the Palmyra Reflector and used Grandin's printing equipment during evenings and Sundays, gained access to material from the Book of Mormon. The arrangement placed Cole unusually close to the production of the book. While Grandin's employees were working on the volume, Cole was operating in the same printing environment. He began publishing excerpts before the book was officially available for sale. The first appeared in January 1830. More followed. For some readers, these fragments were their first encounter with the new scripture. They were not holding the finished book. They were seeing selected portions presented through a newspaper involved in the controversy. The public discussion was therefore moving faster than the publication itself. The text was not simply being reported. Cole used it to ridicule the new book. The controversy now had a printed voice. The Book of Mormon was being discussed before the completed edition could speak for itself in the marketplace. That created a new problem for Joseph Smith and his associates. If the public first encountered the book through hostile newspaper treatment, they could not control the impression those excerpts created. Joseph Smith and his associates confronted Cole. The unauthorized publication eventually stopped, but the damage, or perhaps the publicity, could not simply be undone. The excerpts had already reached readers. The controversy had already acquired a public record, and the name of the book was becoming known before its official appearance. Because now the book had entered the public conversation, and some residents of Palmyra went further. Opposition became organized enough that a group reportedly resolved not to purchase the book when it appeared. The reaction revealed how uncertain the coming publication really was. Thousands of copies were being prepared for sale, yet some people in the very community where they were being printed were already determined not to buy them. The printer had a financial obligation. The community had its critics, and thousands of copies were waiting to enter the market. Then came the moment none of them could avoid. The book was finally ready. This documentary focuses on the documented history of the Book of Mormon's 1830 publication, printing, reception, and early circulation. Some details vary among historical sources, so disputed or uncertain claims are presented cautiously. Chapter 3. When the book finally reached the public. On March 26, 1830, an announcement appeared in the Wayne Sentinel. The Book of Mormon was now for sale. The long printing process was over. Months of typesetting and press work had produced finished volumes. The manuscript had become a commercial object. The project had crossed a line that could not easily be reversed, and the controversy could no longer be confined to rumors and newspaper excerpts. People could now hold the book themselves. They could turn through its pages. They could read the complete text rather than fragments selected by someone else. They could judge it on their own terms. The first edition contained 5,000 copies. That number represented the scale of the original gamble. 5,000 physical books now existed where months earlier there had been only manuscripts and plans for publication. Some were sold. Others were given to converts and supporters. The audience was no longer limited to people living around the printing operation. Copies began moving beyond Palmyra. The book could now travel with the people who accepted it. It could cross the same roads and waterways that connected communities across the young republic. The physical book gave the movement something that rumors could not provide: a common text, a durable object, something that could be opened again and again by people who had never met its printer or its principal advocate. That changed its potential. A manuscript had limited reach. A printed book could multiply the message, and the people who accepted it could carry it with them. A copy could move into another household, then another community, then another state. The arguments surrounding the book could travel with every copy. A reader could accept it. Another could reject it. Another could simply become curious. The printing press had created a new kind of reach. But this created a new problem for the movement. A controversial book could attract believers. It could also attract critics. The more widely it circulated, the more difficult it became to contain the response to it. And once copies began leaving Palmyra, neither side could fully control where the conversation would go. Chapter 4. From Local Controversy to National Reach. The first edition did not remain in Palmyra. Copies were read by converts. Families shared them. Missionaries carried them into neighboring settlements and other states. The book was becoming a portable foundation for a growing religious movement. That portability mattered. A person no longer needed to travel to Palmyra to encounter the text. The book could travel to them. Each copy created another opportunity for the movement to reach someone new. And with every new reader came the possibility of another response. That was the real transformation. The Book of Mormon was no longer something known only through Joseph Smith and the people around him. It was becoming an object that could circulate independently. A reader could encounter the book without ever meeting Joseph Smith. A critic could examine the same pages as a believer. A missionary could place the book in the hands of someone who had never heard the story of its production. A curious reader could open the book and decide for themselves. The book had acquired something its original manuscript could never possess on the same scale: reach. The printing press had turned one text into thousands of physical objects. And physical objects could move. They could cross boundaries. They could survive changing circumstances. They could be passed from one person to another long after the original printing was finished. A religious dispute that began in Western New York could therefore travel with them. The movement could grow through people, but the book gave those people a common text to carry. A critic could attack its contents. A believer could defend them. A curious reader could open the book and decide for themselves. The printing press had changed the scale of the story. The controversy was no longer limited to what happened in Palmyra. The book itself was becoming part of the encounter between the new religious movement and the wider American public. And that is why the publication of the Book of Mormon matters beyond the question of whether someone accepted its religious claims. In 1830, a small-town printing operation had turned a controversial manuscript into thousands of physical books. Those books could survive their creator. They could travel farther than the people who first handled them. And they could carry an idea into places the original manuscript never could. The question was no longer whether the Book of Mormon would exist. It was how far it would go. Closing reflection. The story of the Book of Mormon's first publication reveals something larger about history. Ideas do not become influential simply because someone believes in them. They need a way to survive. A printer, money, paper, distribution, readers, and people willing to carry the message somewhere else. In 1830, the printing press gave the Book of Mormon that opportunity. Its first appearance was surrounded by financial risk, skepticism, ridicule, and opposition. Yet the same controversy that challenged the book also helped make it visible. Once those first copies left the press, the story could no longer be controlled by the people who created it. It belonged to every reader who opened it. And that is often how history changes. Not when an idea is first created, but when an idea becomes impossible to ignore. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Mode Hub Tales as we uncover the forgotten histories, hidden cultures, and untold stories that shaped our world. Because history doesn't disappear, it waits to be remembered.